The provincial line ran straight through the middle of Rullick's Notch, a red rock canyon town that used to be a way station before the war carved the country into sectors and put a checkpoint on every road worth naming. I farmed the dry side of the line, where the soil was bad and the patrols were worse, and I'd been alone there 9 years when the ash fever caravan came through and left her behind. They called it ash rot. It drifted down off the northern front on the wind, riding the dust from whatever the armies were still burning up there. And it did to a man what fire does to paper. Turned him gray and brittle and then gone, usually inside a week. The province ran checkpoints on every road specifically to catch it before it reached the townships. Every wagon got stopped. Every traveler got looked at. And on the wagon that stopped outside my fence that morning, a province medic pulled a child out of a supply crate, took one look at her mottled gray-silver skin, and called it confirmed. She wasn't sick. I knew that inside a day. Her people. I'd only ever seen a Solon child once before, years back, at a trading post, carried that marbled color naturally, deeper when they were frightened, paler when they were calm. It wasn't fever. It was fear. But the medic wasn't going to stand in that wind and study the difference, and the wagon driver wasn't going to argue with a man holding a province seal, and so they left her on the roadside with a chalk mark on the crate to be collected by the burn detail before nightfall. I got to her first. I told myself it was because no one was watching the far fence line that morning, which was true. I didn't tell myself the other reason for a long while, that I had buried a wife to the actual fever 12 years back, in ground not far from where the child now stood shaking, and that some part of me had been waiting 9 years for a reason to stop farming alone. I broke the chalk mark off the crate and carried her inside before the detail rounds came through. Her name, near as I could get it out of her in the first week, was Rena. She didn't have much province tongue and I didn't have a word of Solon, so we built a language out of pointing and patience, the way you do. She flinched at boot sounds. She wouldn't sleep near the door. It took a month before she'd eat with her back to a wall instead of a corner, and I understood that without needing her to explain it, whatever wagon she'd come off of, whatever crate she'd been shipped in, it hadn't been kind to her, ash rot or no ash rot. I carved her a sun charm that first winter, out of scrap mesquite root, because she used to stand at the window at dawn with her palm flat on the glass like she was trying to hold the light in place before it moved on without her. I drilled a hole through it and she wore it on a leather cord and touched it, I noticed, every single time a province patrol rode past the property line, like it was a thing she could grip instead of gripping the fear. 4 years we had the canyon to ourselves. I taught her water reading, how to find the seep springs in the rock before the surface ones dried, how to read weather off the color of the western ridge. She taught me, without ever meaning to, how to be a house instead of just a homestead, how a door left open on purpose says something a locked one doesn't. By the second year, she'd stopped flinching at boots. By the third, she'd taken to sitting on the porch rail at dusk, calling out the names of things in her own tongue and waiting for me to guess what they meant in mine, and laughing, actually laughing, a sound I hadn't had in the house since my wife, when I guessed wrong on purpose to keep the game going. She grew fast, the way I'm told her people do. And by 10 she was taller than most province children twice her age, and sharper with a water divining rod than I'd ever been. I stopped thinking of her as something I was hiding, and started thinking of her as something I was raising, which is a different weight to carry, and a better one. The province checkpoints tightened the year the front moved south. Ash rot wasn't a rumor from up north anymore. It was in the supply caravans, in the well water at 2 towns over, in a province officer's own lungs by the local paper's account. They started running mandatory sweeps. Every household, every outbuilding, papers checked, skin checked, anyone showing color hauled to a quarantine camp outside Coyle's Ridge that men didn't come back from healthy, if they came back at all. I kept Rena off the register. Told the sweep officer, 3 years running, that I lived alone. It wasn't hard to believe. I'd lived alone long enough before her that the lie fit the shape of the life I'd already been living. The officer who ran our stretch of the line was a tired man named Delic who'd clearly stopped caring what he found in a homestead so long as it wasn't ash rot, and he'd sign his sheet and ride on without ever asking why a childless widower kept a second cot and a stack of dishes too small for one man's hands. I think he knew. I think a lot of men on that line knew things about their sectors they'd decided not to write down, because writing them down meant doing something about them, and doing something about them meant a camp wagon and a chalk mark, and most of those men had daughters of their own once, before the war took the townships apart. The fourth sweep, ash rot was real inside the canyon by then, carried in on a supply mule from Coyle's Ridge before anyone caught it, and it moved through Rullick's Notch fast enough that the province stopped pretending the checkpoints were optional. They came through homesteads with medics now, not just papers. And a medic doesn't take your word for who lives alone. I hid her in the Seep Spring cave 2 ridges back, the one she'd shown me herself the second year, stocked with enough water and dried meal for 4 days. 4 days was supposed to be the sweep. It ran to 9, because the medic team found actual ash rot 2 farms over and quarantined the whole notch while they traced it. She came out of that cave on the 9th day already coughing, and I told myself it was the cave air, the cold rock, nothing more. I wanted it to be nothing more badly enough that I didn't let myself look straight at her color for the first 2 days back in the house, how the gray had gone past frightened deep into something duller, something that didn't lighten even when she slept, even when I sat with her hand in mine and told her, the way you do, that she was safe now, that it was over, that I had her. It wasn't the ash rot. The province medic who finally came, weeks too late, called it lung rot from the cave damp, a thing her body had no name and no answer for, something Solon children back home might have weathered with the right medicine, and something a canyon homestead with 1 old man and no register entry had no way of getting in time. He said it plainly, the way men say things when there's no version of the truth left to soften. He also said, before he left, that he wasn't putting anything about a Solon child in his report. I don't know if that was mercy or cowardice. I've stopped trying to sort those two apart. She died on a morning with good light, which I've decided to be grateful for, because she'd have wanted to see it. I buried her up past the Seep Spring, in ground that stays soft even in the dry months, and I put the sun charm in with her because it had always been more hers than the mesquite roots. I still farm the dry side of the line. The checkpoints have eased some, now that the front's moved on again and ash rot's mostly a thing people mention instead of a thing people fear. Sometimes a caravan stops at my fence the way that first one did, and I go out and look at whatever crate they're hauling before they can chalk mark it for anybody. And I don't know yet what I'll do the day there's a child in it again. I like to think I know. I like to think 9 years taught me something I can use twice. What I know for certain is this. I never told them how many days she had left, not the sweep officers, not the register, not even myself until the very end, when there wasn't any lie left broad enough to cover it. Some things you protect by hiding. That one, I couldn't hide from long enough.